New mask, same task. What can I tell you? I like playing complicated characters.
Robert Downey Jr. is back in the MCU, trading Iron Man's armor for Dr. Doom's mask. But is Marvel's bold move a creative masterstroke or a nostalgic mistake that signals the end of innovative storytelling in the MCU? Let's rewind for a second, because to understand why this casting is either brilliant or catastrophic, you need to understand just how desperate Marvel had become. Remember 2019? Avengers Endgame just became the highest-grossing movie of all time. Robert Downey Jr. gave the performance of his career, the perfect ending, the mic drop to end all mic drops. Except, Marvel couldn't leave it alone. Think about every Marvel movie since Endgame. Go ahead, I'll wait. Spider-Man: No Way Home? Saved by nostalgia and bringing back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Doctor Strange 2? Multiverse cameos galore. Deadpool and Wolverine? Literally just Hugh Jackman coming back from retirement. See the pattern? Marvel's been playing the greatest hits album for 5 years straight. And the audience? They were getting tired of it. The Marvels bombed so hard it made John Carter look like a success story. Ant-Man Quantumania turned one of Marvel's most likable characters into a CGI nightmare that nobody cared about. Even the Disney Plus shows, which were supposed to be the future, started feeling like homework you had to do to understand the movies. But here's where it gets interesting. Marvel had a plan. Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror was going to be the next Thanos. Multiple variants, time travel, a decades-long storyline building to something epic. Then, well, you know what happened. Legal troubles, career over, plan destroyed. Suddenly, Marvel Studios found themselves with 2 massive Avengers movies scheduled for 2026 and 2027, no villain, and a fan base that was already losing interest. So what do you do when you're Kevin Feige and you've just lost your next decade of storytelling? You panic. And when Marvel panics, they reach for the greatest hits. And let's be honest, there's no greater hit than Iron Man himself. Robert Downey Jr., who supposedly closed the book on Marvel forever, suddenly returned to play the villain. But here's the thing that makes this fascinating. Marvel didn't cast Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, despite the risk. They cast him because of the risk. Okay, let me paint you a picture of who Dr. Doom really is.
Okay, it's happening!
Because if you only knew him from those terrible Fantastic Four movies, you have no idea what Marvel just did. Victor Von Doom isn't just a villain, he's probably the most complex character in all of Marvel Comics. Imagine if Darth Vader, Magneto, and Loki had a baby, but that baby was also the rightful ruler of a European country, a master sorcerer, a brilliant scientist, and genuinely cared about his people. Doom doesn't rob banks, he doesn't want to destroy the world. He wants to save it. But he wants to save it his way, under his rule, because he genuinely believes he's the only one smart enough to do it right. And here's the kicker. Sometimes he's right. There are comic storylines where Doom looks into the future and sees thousands of possible timelines. In only one of them does humanity survive and thrive. And in that timeline, Doom is the ruler of Earth. So he's not evil because he's crazy, he's evil because he's willing to do terrible things for what he believes is the greater good. He's a benevolent dictator who actually is benevolent from a certain point of view. This is a character with the depth of Shakespeare's greatest tragic heroes, Macbeth in a metal mask, Hamlet with a superiority complex. And his relationship with Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, isn't just hero versus villain, it's personal, it's Shakespearean. It's about pride, intellect, friendship gone wrong, and paths not taken. Now, how do you think that character works when the audience looks at him and just sees Tony Stark in a different costume? Hold up. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a favorite character from a book, a show, a movie, whatever, and then they adapted it and completely ruined everything you loved about them? Maybe it was how they turned Deadpool into that abomination in X-Men Origins. Maybe it was what they did to the Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds. Or maybe it was something outside of comics entirely. You know that feeling, right? That weird combination of anger and disappointment and betrayal? Like someone took something precious to you and just misunderstood it completely. That's what's happening here. Here's where the story gets really interesting. Because Marvel didn't just cast Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, they reportedly paid him over $100 million to do it. $100 million. To put that in perspective, that's more than most movies' entire budgets. And here's the thing about spending that much money on one actor. It creates what economists call sunk cost fallacy on steroids. See, when you pay Robert Downey Jr. $100 million to play Dr. Doom, you're not just hiring an actor. You're making him the centerpiece of your marketing campaign. You're building your entire movie around his star power. You're basically guaranteeing that every piece of promotion, every poster, every trailer is going to be about RDJ's return to Marvel. Which means Dr. Doom, this incredibly complex, nuanced character with 60 years of comic book history, becomes secondary to the Robert Downey Jr. comeback story. The character becomes the marketing campaign. And once that happens, how do you ever separate them again? Think about it. Marvel is spending $100 million. That means they need this to work, which means if there are any problems with the performance, any issues with the characterization, any fan backlash, they can't just course correct. They're committed. They've essentially bet the entire future of one of their most important villains on the hope that audiences will be so excited to see Tony Stark again that they won't care if Dr. Doom gets lost in the process. But here's the really crazy part. Marvel's official justification for this casting? The multiverse. Oh, it's not Tony Stark playing Dr. Doom, it's a version of Tony Stark from another universe who became Dr. Doom instead of Iron Man. Sounds reasonable, right? Except that's exactly the kind of lazy storytelling that's been killing Marvel for the past 5 years. The multiverse was supposed to open up infinite creative possibilities. Instead, it's become an excuse to avoid taking creative risks. Why develop new characters when you can just bring back old ones from different universes? Why create original storylines when you can just do what if this character but evil? Why cast an unknown actor as Dr. Doom when you can just cast Tony Stark and say, multiverse? It's like Marvel looked at the most creatively bankrupt possible solution and said, perfect, that's our strategy. And the worst part? It's working. Spider-Man No Way Home made almost $2 billion by basically being previous Spider-Man actors but in one movie. Deadpool and Wolverine printed money by being Hugh Jackman, but he said he'd never do this again. So of course they think Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom will work, because audiences have been rewarding this exact strategy for years. But here's what Marvel isn't considering.
You know me?
I do. You're not the only one cursed with knowledge.
Let me tell you about something psychologists call the curse of knowledge. It's basically this. Once you know something, it becomes almost impossible to imagine not knowing it. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. And Robert Downey Jr. has a very specific curse of knowledge problem. For 11 years, he was Tony Stark. Not played Tony Stark, was Tony Stark. His mannerisms, his voice, his facial expressions, his entire screen presence became synonymous with one of the most beloved characters in movie history. So when he puts on that Dr. Doom mask and delivers his first line, what do you think audiences are going to see? Are they going to see Victor Von Doom, the tragic ruler of Latveria, driven by a brilliant mind and a scarred past? Or are they going to see Tony Stark in cosplay? And here's the thing, it doesn't matter how good his performance is, it doesn't matter if he changes his voice, his posture, his entire acting style, because the moment he takes that mask off and you see Robert Downey Jr.'s face, a decade of Marvel movies is going to come flooding back. Every "I am Iron Man," every quip, every moment that made you fall in love with Tony Stark. And suddenly Dr. Doom, this Shakespearean villain, this complex anti-hero, this character who should feel mythic and operatic and larger than life, becomes Robert Downey Jr. playing dress-up. But wait, there's another layer to this that makes it even more problematic.
Wait for it.
Dr. Doom in the comics is Romani. He's from a persecuted minority group. His mother was killed because of prejudice and superstition. His rise to power is partly about overcoming systemic oppression. It's not just backstory, it's fundamental to who he is as a character. And Marvel just cast Robert Downey Jr. Now look, I'm not saying RDJ is a bad person, or that he can't play complex characters. The guy's incredibly talented. He's proven he can handle dramatic roles. But when Hollywood already has a pretty terrible track record with representation, when there are incredibly talented actors from underrepresented communities who could have brought authentic perspective to this role, Marvel chose the safest, most commercially viable option instead. And when you're paying someone $100 million, you can't even pretend it's about the best actor for the role. It's about the most profitable actor for the role, which brings us to the real question. Imagine for a second that Marvel had made a different choice. Imagine they'd cast someone like Oscar Henada, a Spanish actor with classical training who could have brought authentic European gravitas to the role. Or Javier Bardem, Academy Award winner, proven in both dramatic and villainous roles, international star power. Any of these actors could have brought something fresh to Doctor Doom. They could have made the character feel new, dangerous, unpredictable. And here's the crazy part. They could have done it for a fraction of the cost. That $100 million they spent on Robert Downey Jr., they could have hired an amazing actor for $5 million and spent the remaining $75 million on making the movie better. Better special effects, better practical costumes, better writing, a bigger supporting cast. They could have made a movie about Doctor Doom instead of a movie about Robert Downey Jr. playing Doctor Doom. But that would have required something Marvel Studios seems to have lost somewhere along the way: confidence in their own storytelling ability. See, here's what this casting decision really represents. It's Marvel Studios admitting they don't believe in their own creative vision anymore. Think about the original Iron Man back in 2008. Robert Downey Jr. wasn't a safe choice then. He was coming off personal struggles, legal issues, career uncertainty. Iron Man wasn't even a particularly popular character in the comics. Marvel took a risk. They trusted their vision. They believed in the story they wanted to tell. And it changed everything. But somewhere between Endgame and now, Marvel lost that confidence. They stopped trusting audiences to embrace new characters, new stories, new risks. Instead, they started chasing algorithms, focus groups, market research that says audiences want familiar faces and nostalgia sells tickets. And technically, they're not wrong. Spider-Man: No Way Home proves that nostalgia can make billions of dollars. But here's what they're missing. Audiences don't actually want nostalgia. They want to feel the way nostalgia makes them feel. They want excitement, wonder, the thrill of discovering something new and falling in love with it. Nostalgia is just a shortcut to those feelings, but it's not the only path. And by choosing the shortcut every single time, Marvel is training audiences to expect it. They're creating a cycle where the only way to generate excitement is by bringing back something old, which means every new character, every original story, every creative risk becomes harder to sell. Okay, let's pause for a second and talk about you. Because ultimately, this isn't just about Marvel's business decisions or creative choices. This is about what kind of stories we want to see. Do you want safe, familiar, predictable entertainment that hits all the right nostalgia buttons? Or do you want to be surprised? Do you want to discover new characters, fall in love with fresh stories, experience that feeling you had when you first saw Iron Man, or Black Panther, or Guardians of the Galaxy? Because every time we reward studios for playing it safe, we're voting for more of the same. Every time we make a nostalgia bait movie successful, we're telling Hollywood that's what we want. And every time we accept good enough, instead of demanding genuinely great, we're shaping the future of storytelling. So the question isn't really whether Robert Downey Jr. will be a good Doctor Doom. The question is, what kind of future are we choosing? But let's say Marvel's gamble pays off. Let's say Robert Downey Jr. manages to completely transform his screen presence and create a Doctor Doom that feels distinct from Tony Stark. Is that even possible? Well, let's look at the evidence. RDJ is legitimately a great actor. Before Iron Man, he gave incredible performances in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Zodiac, Chaplin. He's got range, he's got depth, he's proven he can disappear into a character. And there are examples of actors successfully reinventing themselves within the same franchise. Look at what Tom Hardy did, going from Bane in Dark Knight Rises to Venom. Look at what Josh Brolin did, playing both Thanos and Cable. It can be done. But there's a difference between playing two different characters and playing a character that's essentially the evil twin of your most iconic role. The psychological associations are too strong, the visual similarities too obvious, the risk of comparison too high. Plus, there's another problem. Doctor Doom traditionally keeps his mask on for most of his screen time. His face is scarred, hidden, mysterious. But when you're paying Robert Downey Jr. $100 million, you're not going to keep that face hidden. You're going to show it in the trailers, put it on the posters, make it the center of your marketing campaign. Which means the mask, one of Doom's most iconic visual elements, becomes just another prop instead of a crucial part of his character. The reaction to this casting has been complicated. On one hand, you have the Hall H crowd, casual Marvel fans who were just thrilled to see RDJ back in the MCU. For them, this is pure wish fulfillment. Iron Man is back. The Russo brothers are back. Everything's going to be awesome again. On the other hand, you have the comic book fans, the people who've been reading Dr. Doom stories for decades, who understand what makes the character special. And they're not happy. The casual fans are right that RDJ's return will generate massive excitement and probably massive box office numbers. The comic fans are right that this casting fundamentally misunderstands what makes Dr. Doom compelling. But there's a third group that's even more interesting. The people who are excited and worried at the same time. These are fans who love Robert Downey Jr., who trust his acting ability, but who also understand the risks involved. They want this to work, but they're terrified it won't. And honestly, that might be the most reasonable position of all. Let's look at some history, because Marvel isn't the first studio to make a controversial casting choice that divided fans. Remember when Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker? Fans were furious. Online petitions, boycott threats, the whole 9 yards. People thought he was too young, too pretty, too much of a teen heartthrob to play Batman's greatest enemy. And then The Dark Knight came out, and Ledger delivered one of the greatest villain performances in movie history. He didn't just play the Joker, he redefined the character for an entire generation. But here's the key difference. Ledger wasn't playing against type from within the same franchise. He wasn't coming off playing Batman's best friend and then switching to play his worst enemy. On the flip side, look at what happened with Batman and Robin. Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze was pure stunt casting. A huge star playing an iconic villain. And it was a disaster. Not because Arnold is a bad actor, but because the movie prioritized his star power over the character. The result? Mr. Freeze became Arnold Schwarzenegger making ice puns instead of a tragic villain with genuine emotional depth. Sound familiar? There is one element that could change everything: the Russo brothers. These are the directors who made Captain America: The Winter Soldier feel like a political thriller, who turned Civil War into a character study about friendship and betrayal, who somehow made Infinity War and Endgame work despite juggling dozens of characters and storylines. If anyone can pull off this seemingly impossible casting choice, it's them. Joe Russo has said they chose RDJ because they wanted an actor who could match the gravitas and complexity that Dr. Doom deserves. That's actually promising. It suggests they understand the character needs to be more than just evil Tony Stark. But it also puts enormous pressure on the script. Because if the writing doesn't clearly differentiate between Doom and Stark, even the best directors in the world can't save it. And here's the really interesting part. The Russo brothers have never actually made a bad Marvel movie. Their track record in the MCU is spotless. But outside the MCU, that's a whole different story, one I've broken down in another video, where I explain why the Russos succeed in Marvel's sandbox but stumble outside it. Definitely check that out after this one. So either this is going to be their masterpiece, the movie that proves controversial casting can work when you have the right vision behind it, or it's going to be their first major failure. There's really no middle ground. Let's fast forward for a second. Let's say Avengers Doomsday comes out in 2026 and it's fine. Not great, not terrible, just fine. Robert Downey Jr. gives a decent performance as Dr. Doom, but it feels more like Tony Stark cosplaying than a genuine character transformation. The movie makes money because of nostalgia and star power, but it doesn't create any new fans of Dr. Doom as a character. What happens then? Well, Marvel has reportedly signed RDJ for multiple movies, so we get Dr. Doom in Secret Wars in 2027, probably more appearances after that. But every single one of those appearances will be compared to Tony Stark. Every single one will be limited by that association. And worse, what happens when Robert Downey Jr. eventually retires from the role? How do you recast Doctor Doom when an entire generation of fans has only seen him as RDJ? Do you find another actor who can imitate RDJ's version? Do you completely reboot the character? Do you just retire Doctor Doom forever?
Retarded.
Retired.
Marvel might have just painted themselves into a corner with one of their most valuable villains. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to admit. Lately, Marvel Studios hasn't been in the business of making art. They've been in the business of making money. And from a purely financial perspective, this casting makes perfect sense. Robert Downey Jr. guarantees opening weekend box office. International markets love familiar faces. Merchandise sales will be massive. The marketing campaign practically writes itself. Disney shareholders don't care if Doctor Doom's character integrity is compromised, they care if the stock price goes up.
I like money.
And that's not necessarily evil or wrong. Disney is a public company with fiduciary responsibilities to its investors. But it does mean that creative considerations are always going to be secondary to financial ones. The question is, what happens when those two priorities conflict? Because that's exactly what's happening here. The most financially safe choice, RDJ as Doom, might also be the most creatively limiting choice. And Marvel is betting that audiences won't notice the difference. Which brings us back to you. Because ultimately, studios make the movies that audiences reward. If Avengers Doomsday makes $2 billion at the box office, that tells Marvel, and every other studio, that nostalgic casting works. That audiences prefer familiar faces over creative risks. That it's more profitable to recycle old characters than create new ones. But if audiences stay home, if the movie underperforms, if people demand better, that sends a different message. Every ticket you buy is a vote for the kind of movies you want to see. Every time you choose a nostalgic sequel over an original story, you're shaping Hollywood's future. And every time you accept good enough instead of demanding genuinely great, you're lowering the bar for everyone. So the question isn't just whether Robert Downey Jr. will make a good Doctor Doom. The question is, what are you going to vote for? After analyzing all the evidence, all the arguments, all the possibilities, I think Marvel just made a decision that could define the next decade of superhero movies. And honestly, I'm not sure it's going to end well. Look, there's a chance this works. There's a chance Robert Downey Jr. delivers a performance so transformative, so completely different from Tony Stark, that it redefines what we think is possible in superhero casting. There's a chance the Russo brothers craft a story so compelling that it makes us forget about Iron Man and fall in love with Doctor Doom as a completely separate character. There's a chance this becomes the Dark Knight of Marvel movies, a controversial casting choice that becomes legendary. But there's a much bigger chance that this becomes exactly what it looks like on the surface. A desperate, expensive attempt to recapture past glory by recycling beloved characters instead of creating new ones. And if that happens, Marvel won't just lose money on one movie. They could potentially damage one of their most important villains forever. They tell audiences that creativity matters less than star power. They prove that they've lost confidence in their own storytelling ability. And they set a precedent that could haunt the franchise for years to come. Here's what I keep coming back to. This decision wasn't made in a vacuum. Marvel made this choice because they believe it's what audiences want. And maybe they're right. Maybe that is what most people want. But if you're watching this video, if you've made it this far, chances are you want something more. You want to be surprised. You want to discover new characters and fall in love with them. You want studios to take creative risks instead of playing it safe. You want the next Iron Man moment, that feeling of watching something genuinely new and exciting, instead of just another greatest hits album. And here's the thing, you have more power than you think, because every choice you make as a viewer, what you watch, what you skip, what you recommend to friends, what you talk about online, shapes the future of entertainment. So when Avengers Doomsday comes out in 2026, you'll have a choice to make. You can reward Marvel for playing it safe, or you can demand that they do better. You can accept good enough, or you can vote for genuinely great. The future of Doctor Doom, and frankly, the future of creative storytelling in Hollywood, might just depend on what you choose. What's it going to be? And if this video made you think differently about Marvel's biggest gamble in years, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button for more. Thanks for watching.